So here I am with somebody that is near and dear to all of our hearts, and I've found actually in my time in Gibsonville and Burlington that you're perhaps the most beloved man in Alamance County, even maybe North Carolina. I'm not going to go that far right now.
Yeah, that'd be
but Pastor Bob Disher. And Bob, you and I, we've had a chance to get together quite a few times over the past few months, but I recognize that hasn't been a privilege for many. And so just want to take a few minutes to catch up with you and hear about how life is going. So what have you been up to?
Well, yeah, so retirement. There's nobody hands you a manual, and nobody's written out the little, the 1, 2, 3 steps. And what I've noticed over the last few months is that the go-to question, and at least 100 times, maybe that's modest, are you enjoying retirement?
Yeah.
And how do you know? It's only, in just a few months. So my go-to response has been, and this is as accurate as Susan and I can really say it, and this is meaningful to us. No. Now, I wouldn't say we're enjoying retirement because we haven't had long enough to really feel it, but we are extraordinarily content.
Awesome.
And so the contentment about this season has just almost been overwhelming. It's a lot more than we anticipated as we started walking that pathway, but God just serving us a season, this initial season of contentment has been pretty outstanding.
Yeah.
And so, maybe I'll enjoy it someday.
Definitely.
Who knows?
Yeah, I had a moment right before Easter as I was sitting in the original sanctuary and just reflecting on just the remarkable growth of this church under your stewardship, and I was just struck by the amount that you have poured in and invested over the years, and thinking towards Easter and recognizing that was going to be the first Easter in 45 some years that you were having a chance to really sit in the resurrection of Jesus without the kind of the weight of getting up on stage. Tell me a little bit, how's it been for you to really rest in God's presence in this season? Where are you at with that?
Yeah, let me say something about the Easter piece, because we were able to go to church with our family, with our daughter and son-in-law and grandkids, and that was really pretty special. We went to their church over in Apex, and it's a great church. A couple things happened that day. One is my grandson, who's 12 in middle school, they didn't, for whatever reason, the middle school program wasn't happening that weekend.
Okay.
So he sat right here. And that was the coolest thing.
That's awesome.
To be able to sit through an entire service and a resurrection service with my 12-year-old grandson, 2 generations away from me. And I thought, wow, boy, this is as good as it gets. But that was, really the first time that we had ever sat in a church on Easter Sunday as a family, or ever, really.
Yeah.
I mean, since I'd been in ministry. And the other thing is, as you very well know, particularly to the High Holy Days, there's a ramp up. There's a pretty serious ramp up in the life of the church. And you felt that this Easter. And so I didn't feel that for the first time.
Wow.
And so I think Easter's in a couple of weeks, and I mean, in the past, you could ask me, so do you know what the date is of Easter in 2025? And I'd know it just like that, because you just kind of kept up with that. And
well, your preparation is a little better than mine, because I told everyone that I booked tickets to Hamilton on Easter Sunday.
I heard that story.
About it.
That was
so maybe that will come with a few years. I'll be able to know.
You'll develop Easter Sabbath.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sure. So here we were sitting in this church, and it was absolutely packed out, and it's a large church, and it was a great service, but I did not have that. I had not had the ramp up. So on the way home, it's an hour's drive home, and we were talking about, that was fun, but that was Easter.
Yeah.
And so it's just, that's an adjustment that we're making, is to, as you know now, your world revolves around Sundays.
Yeah.
It just does. It's the way it works for pastors and their families. And so this time, our world was revolving on a high holy day around a family moment.
Yeah.
And it was just way different.
Wow.
But very replenishing.
Yeah.
Extraordinarily replenishing and fun to be. I mean, one day you'll maybe you'll know.
Yeah.
To have a 12-year-old grandson.
Exactly.
Sitting there.
Elbowing you, trying to keep you awake.
Yeah, and actually he was paying attention, so which was pretty good too. But yeah.
That's cool, Bob. So, well, I remember it was an encouragement to me during later stages of the interview process, and on Sunday mornings you'd send me a text first thing when you woke up. But the reality is you woke up about 4 a.m, and I was in Chicago, so that was really 3 a.m. for me. So I was probably winding down my sermon thinking at that point. You're an early riser. Has that changed at all in retirement? Have you slept in at all?
No. You know what? I can remember way back in my first church, and these were farmers and old dudes and stuff, and I would say they would get up at 4:30 because they had duties.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's milking cows or it was just duties. And I would say, y'all don't farm anymore. Why do you still get up early? Well, you know, when you get old, you just you get that routine. And I was thinking, that won't happen to me, buddy. You know.
Yeah.
So here I am. You know, I've been a 4:30 guy for quite a long time, and now, I've never set an alarm except on Sundays, just to be on the safe side. But I'm still getting up early, partly because I guess it's just become a part of my rhythm clock, my internal clock. But the other thing is, it's just, I think God knew a long time ago that everybody kind of has their prime time, and early to mid morning or so is just my prime time. So still getting up early.
Yeah.
But what I am doing is I have determined that was always sermon prep time for me, because that's kind of when I was mentally and emotionally at my tops.
Yeah.
So I've just translated that into doing some reading and research that might end up. Am I going to publish one day? I don't know.
Yeah.
I talk to Phil Anderson every now and then, and Phil says, I remember saying, I don't even have an editor. You don't need an editor, he said. You tell the story.
Yeah.
And we'll put it in the hands of an editor, and we'll see what shakes out. So I guess that's just a roundabout way of saying what used to be my morning preparation for the weekends at St. Mark's, it's now a preparation for what may or may not ever come.
Yeah.
But I'm having the best time ever in some ways, just because these readings and doing research I'm having flashbacks.
Yeah.
Of things that I thought maybe were gone forever.
Right.
And all of a sudden they're coming back, and it's beginning to, the picture is beginning to start taking shape. So whether it'll be something that somebody else might be able to read someday, don't know that yet, but I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, well, we're going to take a little bit of church privilege here. You're going to give us a sneak peek of the synopsis. What's the story that you're telling, that you're researching? Give us a little look
there's
into the back room there.
It's kind of like I'll say to people every now and then, I've always been kind of a history guy. Well, now I am history. It's sort of like, when you get a certain age, and then you think, everything about me is in the past. So, it's the reflection on what has been. But for me, it was always, and I think I tried to live that out in my years here at St. Mark's Church, and that is that this is what God is doing now, but it's always in preparation for what God will do. And sometimes as I reflect back, we were able to see that. We were able to anticipate what God's vision for the next season or the next year or whatever it might be. But even when we didn't sense that, we always knew that this was a church that was thinking about living in the moment, but this is just our moment. God is using this moment so that we can hand off something that a new generation is going to be able to build on.
Yeah.
And I was telling someone just yesterday, I was talking to a young guy, and I said, St. Mark's Church, that, like your children, are probably the 6th generation in the life of the church. That gives me cold chills just to think that, you look at your two guys and you're thinking, well, somebody's going to take care of you.
Yeah.
There's a community of believers
Right.
somewhere. And you and Brittany are probably praying and saying, God, make sure that the community that receives our boys is going to be prepared and ready to help them meet the challenges that you and I can't see yet.
That's awesome.
So,
yeah, I was responding to an email from one of our sixth graders today that she wanted to ask some questions about what it's like to be in pastoral ministry and what's one of the things that I love most. And I talked about that recognition of being able to look at where we are now and then imagine where God's leading us in the future. And I think that's something that you did remarkably well throughout your time and continue to do. And we're so appreciative of just that forward thinking and that ability to really value the past and cherish the present, but also think forward to what God's doing in His kingdom.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
because you and I know that as dark as the world sometimes becomes, it does not have the capacity to shut down the light of Christ. So we know that God's got a future.
Yeah.
And we may or may not be living in it, but we know it's there.
Yeah.
And so what we do is, I love that verse over in the book of Acts where it said David served God in his generation. David was a pretty big guy.
Yeah.
So David served God in his generation, because you and I are not responsible for back there.
Yeah.
The generations that came before.
Yeah.
And all we can do to the generation yet to be born is just make sure that we that the handoff goes well.
Yeah. Well, and the confidence of that cloud of witnesses, of which David is one of them, that we're surrounded by this mantle as we go forward. So.
Absolutely. Yeah,
cool.
For sure. Yep.
Well, we've talked about history and obviously recognize that both of us are somewhat of history geeks here. But, one of the things when I was out looking for houses, you shot me a text and you said, hey, can you come out this afternoon? I want to show you a special place. And so, I kind of came out, you blindfolded me, spun me around a few times. You didn't need to do that. I had no idea where we were. And we drove out to a special church just in the history of our community, but also in your life and now mine, Brick Church. And we got to talk about what it looked like to capture the vision of a group of people that expanded God's kingdom in this region. Tell me a little bit about what God's doing in your heart in this next season that might actually merge those paths once again.
Yeah, it is kind of an interesting story. So St. Mark's was born out of Brick Church.
Yeah.
Brick Church was a 1813 church, and sometime around 1850 or a little later than that, the pastor there, George Welker, someone said to him at Brick Church, and Brick's about 8 miles from here, but they said, hey, we've heard that there's a group of German Reformed people over at near Boone Station, which is about a quarter of a mile from where you and I are sitting right now, back in those old days. And we've heard that there might be an interest in a church. So Welker comes over here and says, hey, look, I'm going to be there, and on Saturday, January 13th, happened to be 1855, and he said, if there's any interest in talking about a church, just show up. And a handful of people showed up, and he said, all right, let's meet tomorrow, and we'll meet in so-and-so's home. And so that Sunday, the 14th of January, 1855, 31 people and a few kids. 31 people signed the charter. Wow. And so Brick Church kind of said to their pastor, go over and check it out.
Wow.
There may be an interest in now we would call it a church plant.
Yeah.
But I don't know what they called it back in those days. And so this church was born. And now kind of go full circle, and I've known of Brick Church over the years and the historical connection, because our church and theirs, we were served by one pastor up until the 1940s.
Yeah.
And then both churches decided they could support their own leader. So I know a lot of the people there and have preached there quite a few times over the years. And the young pastor there now, Jeff, and you know Jeff, and he's just a fabulous young guy. He preached here last fall.
Great.
And golly, the people here just kind of fell in love with this guy. He's not a kid, but he's just good. And so we meet every now and then. We meet once a month at least, a little mentoring kind of thing. And so Jeff said to me several months back, he said, "Look, I'm granted sabbatical because I've been there 7 years, and kind of it was a part of the deal. And so I'm taking the whole summer off of 22."
Yeah.
And he said, but they're making me responsible for getting people to preach. And he said, "So could you give me a list of some guys or girls? Can you give me a list of some people who could come and preach?" And I said, "Yeah, I can. Let me think about it." So I texted him back and I said, if I find somebody who would do the whole summer, and he said, "God, that would be fine." And honestly, I wasn't thinking about me. But I went home and I told Susan, I said, "You know something? I so like that guy. He's endeared himself to me, and I care about Brick Church."
Yeah.
And I said, "I think I'm going to volunteer for that."
Wow.
And so I called him and I said, "I found you somebody." And I said, I guess you got to run this by someone out there. But I said, "I'd do that. I'll preach for you this summer." And he said, "Oh man." And so now you're going to like this because, you got that unanimous vote.
Yeah, there you go.
When you came to St. Mark's. So 2 weeks later, I get a text from him and he said, "Hey, got good news." He said, our governing board, there are 12 members of the board. It was unanimous.
There you go.
It's the only time I've ever had a unanimous vote.
See, but I'm telling you, what's the common thread? It's Pastor Bob.
Well, and maybe it's Pastor Pete.
I don't know about that.
So I was unanimously accepted. So I'll be out there June, July, and August,
awesome.
and I'll love those people.
Yeah.
It's a neat little church.
You gonna be dusting off the best hits of Reverend Disher from the past 43 years.
Not gonna talk about that.
I won't give away any trade secrets there. That's awesome. Well. Yeah. Very cool. How can we, as a community, be encouraging you and Susan, praying for you as you step into this exciting new season? What does it look like for us to come around you?
Golly, we have felt tremendous affirmation from this church over the last couple of years in preparation for kind of winding down our ministry. But I think if this church would continue to commit themselves to building a strong future, I sleep better. Wow. We made a great choice, and are so glad that you're here. And that was such a good call that the church made, and so I'm glad for that. But if I know that you all are taking the part that was handed to you to say, let's just wonder what the Spirit of God's going to do.
Yeah.
Then, man, I tell you what, I'm still going to get up at 4:30, but I'm going to sleep. I'm going to sleep better. I think Susan and I are good. I think we're doing well. We are enjoying this season. We miss people here. But we run into people from time to time. There have been a couple services that I've had to be a part of here, and so you see people, and it's been warmth and receptivity, and certainly we miss seeing people here. But I'm hopelessly in love with what God might do. Yeah. So I guess just keep doing it, and we will. We'll be, before I retired, people would say, "Hey, so you going to come to church here?" "Yeah, probably someday." And so where are you going to sit?
There you go. You got to pick your spot.
You going to sit on the front row? No, I'm not sitting on the front row. I'm done with the front row stuff. But so I'm not sure. But I keep saying to people, "Well, save me seats," because you know how church people are.
I know we can't contest season tickets out there.
Yeah. So we'll be excited to come here and to see people and to support you and your team. But we're good. I mean, we really are, and God has been way more gracious than we could ever deserve. Not just in these past months, but and I mean, we're coming up on our 49th wedding anniversary in a few weeks, and it's been a good It's been
awesome.
good. Yeah, God's been faithful.
Well, you are so cherished here, and I think the common refrain every handshake that I have out there in the lobby is always met with this refrain of saying, "We love Pastor Bob, and you got big shoes to fill." And so, it's clear to me that this is a community that cherishes you and Susan, and I've been so grateful to have a relationship with you, and can't wait to continue to grow that together. We have felt your prayers. I hope that you have felt our prayers.
Yeah.
And I want to put you on the spot a little bit here and ask you if you'd be willing just to close us out with a time of prayer for St. Mark's, for Brick Church, as we continue on this path towards the
Glad
future.
to. And I'm probably still going to continue to send you these 4:30 a.m. Sunday morning text
messages.
That's
good. I appreciate it.
But at least you do know that I'm praying.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
thank you.
God, you are the faithful one. And we are so honored and blessed that you would call us to do your bidding. That we get to represent your Son, Jesus, in this community. That so much of his reputation hangs in the balance of local churches. Pour out your favor on churches in every community and in every generation. And raise up leaders and servants or servant leaders who, regardless of the generation, regardless of the challenges that this world throws in our direction, no matter the darkness that sin sometimes creates, that we serve the risen one, and we serve the one who stretched out his arms on a cross to make the payment. We're so grateful for that. And I pray for Pete, for the staff, for the volunteers, and for the hundreds and hundreds of people who call this their church, and it is. And I would ask you, God, to continue to build in them an energy and an enthusiasm so that when we hand off to a new generation, that you would be able to say, "Well done." That's our hope and dream. We pray in Jesus' name.